Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back to all of the Mortal Kombat video games. Ladies and gentlemen, Mortal Kombat 1 is soon upon us, and in fact, as you're watching this, if you pre-ordered the premium edition with all that early access stuff, then you actually already may be playing Mortal Kombat 1. So naturally, what I wanted to do was dress for the occasion and celebrate a series that I absolutely adore. You see, I sort of fell out of love with Mortal Kombat in the PS4 era, but MK1 is bringing me back, man. This game looks absolutely incredible, and I'm hoping this is a launch with no snags. We'll get into it a bit with MK10 and MK11, but ladies and gentlemen, if you are new here and you're into nostalgic and retrospective content, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing, and first, a quick word from today's sponsor. The following video is brought to you by Rocket Money. Ladies and gentlemen, as I talked about a couple months ago, I am now a homeowner, and bills are racking up as you'd expect, and also things happen in life, which means I may have another medical bill in my hands. I need to save money, and that's why I'm here to tell you about Rocket Money. Subscription services are gonna bleed you dry, but Rocket Money safely and securely identifies recurring charges and cancels unwanted subscription services for you with just a tap. So you can lower those bills simply by uploading a photo and tapping a button. Rocket Money can negotiate your bills for you, from internet service bills to cell phone and cable bills. To me, this is just music to my ears. You know, when you start owning a house, when things happen in life, budgeting, that's all life is. Budget, budget, budget. You can even monitor your credit score with complete access to your credit reports and history, so Rocket Money will alert you of important changes that impact your credit score. And you can even set up a smart savings account. This one's super important for my friends out there who maybe struggle a bit with saving money. This will automatically transfer some money that you deposit on a recurring level into a savings account for you thanks to the smart savings account. Download Rocket Money and unlock more features with premium. All you have to do is go to the link down below, rocketmoney.com/retrorebound, sign up there and enjoy yourself some savings. Shout out to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video. All right, let's begin things with Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. A new era of Mortal Kombat begins with the first ever one on PlayStation 2. The big selling point here not only was 3D, better graphics, all that fun stuff, it was really the 3-stance fighting style system that you could shift between. And this would be actually a mainstay between Deadly Alliance, Armageddon, as well as Deception, which I think are games that just gradually got better and better and better. Now, when it comes to Deadly Alliance, this is a fighting game, dude's fighting game, as I would like to put it, because if you're here for a really cool conquest mode or separate single player content, you're really not going to find that here in Deadly Alliance. In fact, I'd argue it features probably one of the worst fighting game stories, yes, even for its time, because you know those combo training modes that a lot of fighting games have nowadays? That's the conquest in this game. You just play as a character and do a series of challenges. Now, when you finish them all, you do unlock a new character in Blaze, so maybe it's worthwhile to some people, but yeah, this is like not what you're here for. What you're here for is to recognize how big of a deal this was for its time, especially with the impressive visuals. You had blood that stained the arena around you, adding to the violent nature of the series. The fatalities were more gruesome than ever for its time, even if some of the body parts look like popcorn and chicken nuggets, and there are even some hilarious fatalities like Quan Chi stretching a dude's neck, like, hey, how's that for a chiropractor? Call your man Quan Chi. There's also one with Bo Rai Tro where he just body slams someone, or Movado using a spike boot slingshot. You could see there was a little bit of jank there, but it was belief in a new era of Mortal Kombat. So Deadly Alliance, I always define it as the fighting game dude's fighting game. If you want a highly technical Mortal Kombat fighting game on the PS2, you're gonna find it here in Deadly Alliance. Let's check out a complete in-box copy and then move on to Mortal Kombat Deception. Here we have a complete in-box copy of Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. You're going to notice they get really liberal with the usage of this logo here until around MK9, where they go, oh, we have these iconic characters. What if we put those on the cover art instead? You'll see what I mean. But back of the box says, a fight so brutal, so evil, so deadly. Two powerful sorcerers, Shang Tsung and Quan Chi, have joined forces to achieve the supreme goal, immortality. Will Earth survive their deadly alliance? Hence the name. So now you get it. It says here, experience the lethal intensity of an all-new Mortal Kombat fighting system, unleash your warriors' 3 unique fighting styles, including hand-to-hand and deadly weapon combat, and control hardcore, extremely realistic fighting and brutal new fatalities. They also include some pretty cool DVD content here, Like it says video game exclusive Adama's Immortal music video, behind the scenes making of Deadly Alliance and the history of Mortal Kombat. And it also says encounter more than 20 new and classic warriors, including Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, and Kenshi. Meanwhile, on the inside here, we have a pretty meaty instruction booklet. And you're gonna notice that I think black and white is kind of the tone here for Mortal Kombat. Even in the early days, you see that they don't go too hard with the illustrations. They break down the story here. They say, with the aid of the Thunder God known as Raiden, Earthrealm's mightiest heroes have repelled all invasions from otherworldly forces through a tournament known as Mortal Kombat. So that's an important piece moving forward into the rest of the game's stories. You have the arcade mode here. Like I mentioned, it's not a content-dense package here because they go through the conquest mode, which is a lot of combo skills that you have to learn, and then they bring you to the crypt where you would get all of your unlockables. A cycle as old as time itself. They break down the arena here, which is pretty important given that this is their move to 3D, the moves list and how that feels. All of the fighters in the game, so you want to study up on this on your car ride home with the game. You can see some unfamiliar faces like Bravado is here in the game, which you love to see. And then here you have the crypt. So it says, as you open coffins, cross out the corresponding text below so you can keep track of the coffins you've purchased. You can write your profile code here, something that you had to put into every Mortal Kombat game up until Armageddon to save your game properly. Otherwise, someone could hijack your profile and maybe start using yours instead. They have the fight records here in the back, which is something that's in a lot of these manuals, and the credits, and you have a little bit of a promotion here for Haven, Call of the King, Defender, Saving the Human Race, and Adema, Insomniac's Dream. So yeah, just a lot of weird promos here for Midway. But anyway, that is a complete in-box experience for Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. Mortal Kombat Deception. I want you to bookmark this one to the back of your head for later in this video. Trust me, it's going to be extremely relevant. Remember I said Deadly Alliance was the fighting game dude's fighting game? Well, now let the mini games begin. Now you're making games for people like me who want to have a really serious fighting game, but also be able to just cool off and have some fun over on the side. This is where we had chess combat first appear. So what happens in Mortal Kombat Deception is there will be a chessboard laid out before you. And there are going to be little spells that you can cast from healing to teleporting and so on and so forth to gain advantage on the chessboard. This happens after you build a team of fighters, from your grunts to your sorcerers and your champions and so on. And they all have different roles on the board. But the idea is simple. Move your character to a certain part of the board where another character is, and you're going to fight him for that square on the board. So it's a lot of Mortal Kombat fighting, but at the same time, you do get a little bit of strategy in there with when you want to deploy certain spells. It was a fun little twist on chess, if you will, but still, nonetheless, chess combat is here. It was a fun mini game to play against your friends. There's also puzzle combat, and this one has less Mortal Kombat vibes as it's pretty much just Tetris. What happens is every character you pick from that roster has their own super attack, and these attacks will ramp up as you get more and more sequences correct in the puzzle combat. So as you wipe out a row of red or a row of yellow or blue and so on and so forth, it's going to stack up on your opponent's side of things. You can deploy a little super attack to maybe stagnate them a bit more to gain some momentum on your end. So yeah, it's Tetris, but it's a ton of fun. So there are mini games here to boot, something that Armageddon would evolve once more, but we'll get to that later. If you're looking for just a fighting game here in Deception, this is probably the best feeling one. You don't really lose the technicality of Deadly Alliance, but you get the fun factor of what happened in Armageddon, where they just went all in on fun in that game, to some people's dismay. I found the jank in Deadly Alliance forgivable because it was doing so many new things at that time, and you're kind of stabilizing here in Deception. Not only that, but you're adding something really cool in multi-leveled arenas. So you can start knocking people into different areas of the map, which was really cool for its time. The only fighting game I can think of that was doing it around that time, and I'm sure there were others, but I think of Dead or Alive 3. That game, when I played it on the Xbox demo disc, blew my mind, when you could just knock dudes into the next arena, and the impact of that game. I love Dead or Alive 3. But point being is, this is something that Mortal Kombat was now bringing into the mix, and when you combine it with its very bloody, violent nature, which is something I'm going to be saying a lot this video, I apologize in advance, it really did add to the game in that sense of awe and wonder. What I mean by that is like deadly stage finishers, you know, throwing dudes in the meat grinder, for example. It's awesome. Now, I did complain about that conquest mode in Deadly Alliance, but here in Deception, it has been dramatically improved into what they call a bit more of a free roaming adventure. So what happens here is you have a day and night system alongside a calendar that's in such a primitive state, I can't help but think of Shenmue alongside its setting, of course. So you can free roam the area and talk to people, and oh Lord, the voice acting. Yeah, you want to talk about, oh, it made me think of Shenmue? Take a listen.
Great job. You are getting good at this. Now follow me.
Perhaps the biggest selling point of Mortal Kombat Deception's Conquest mode was the sheer exploration that was packed into it. This was the only story you could go beyond and see all the realms: Earth Realm, Nether Realm, Chaos Realm, Outworld, and the list goes on. This was the Mortal Kombat game that gave all these realms life beyond a term. And that's what makes it special. Yes, it's a little bit vacant. Yes, there's just a lot of collectibles like picking up tokens and opening chests to get stuff for the crypt. Yes, all of that is true. But what's really cool is just being able to go to different places, meet this cast of characters that are in the fighting game roster, learn what they're up to, meeting them at specific times, passing the time of day. But also, as you're going through all of this, as the main protagonist is growing up before your eyes, starting off as this kid in Earthrealm in a village and growing into something much more with a pretty robust story attached to it. It's something that can be easy to overlook at face value, trust me, guilty as charged, but when it comes to the exploration and seeing the whole entire world, the universe of Mortal Kombat, this game really captures that element best. And as you're free roaming, you can take on a variety of engaging side quests like beating up a pervert, spying on a woman changing, or finding someone's missing house key, you know, essential side quest stuff. Come on, this is important. Don't you get it? So yeah, Deception was a massive leap forward in every single way. It had the fun factor of minigames, it had a much better conquest mode that continued to evolve beyond just combo training. There was a technical fighter beneath the surface. It still had the 3-tier combo system. Like, for many people, this is the favorite of the PS2 era of Mortal Kombat games, and I get why. So let's take a look at Mortal Kombat Deception's complete in box, and then we move over to the Xbox for a very unique spin-off Mortal Kombat game. Moving right along, we've got Mortal Kombat Deception here. Love the art here. You got Shao Kahn. I said Shao Kahn. I'm getting Quan Chi and Shao Kahn mixed up. You got him front and center here. The back of the box says, "It will consume you. An ancient evil has returned from beyond death and threatens the very existence of the realms. Will the champion of the Elder Gods have the power to defeat this threat, born of deception?" So again, now you get the name. Deception. And it actually has a double entendre in my opinion when you get to the PSP game that we'll talk about, but in a moment. Just have patience, we'll get there. Okay, so they say here, experience new fatalities, harakiris, and interactive multi-tiered arenas, including brutal death traps. Conquest mode has a free roam exploring adventure to acquire fighting tips, secrets, and more. Chess Combat, a board game with chess-like strategy and an MK twist. Puzzle Combat, a game with ties to favorite puzzle games of the past, Tetris, and its Mortal Kombat style. A mix of new and classic fighters, including Nightwolf, Sindel, Baraka, Cabal, and special content, including video bios from the MK team, plus an Area 51 playable demo, and you see all of that promoted here down below. Meanwhile, on the inside, disc is already in the PlayStation. Apologies, I was enjoying my time with the game, clearly. And here we have, again, black and white manual. Nothing crazy here. As I mentioned, this is where they started to take this story a little more seriously presentation-wise, so you'll see some of that is broken down in here, but they really focus on all of the modes here, right? We just went through Puzzle Combat, we went through a page before that, Chess Combat, just lots and lots of fun mini games here that really gave Mortal Kombat a personality beyond the brutality, which I think was important for them to gain a lot of fans. But it's a pretty quick one, and then you have the crypt here in the back, and then the next page here is the fighter selection. They break down the story continuing. It's funny because in my opinion, there really wasn't a story in the first place, just some cutscenes that you would unlock over time. Mortal Kombat Online was here in this, which was a pretty big deal for its time. Shadow Realms, Covenant getting a promotion here. Midway, just again, they published some weird games. I've never even heard of this one, but nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, that is a complete in-box copy of Mortal Kombat Deception. Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, what is just a simple beat-em-up spin-off, feels all the more relevant nowadays when you think of where the story's at in the Mortal Kombat universe, where Kung Lao's been chosen as the successor to Liu Kang, and Liu Kang is now Earthrealm's main protector. really love how this game feels like humble beginnings given the stakes of the story now in MK1 with the reboot. So what is Shaolin Monks? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we waited for the next mainline entry up until 2006. We had this fun little spin-off where it's an extremely satisfying beat 'em up starring my personal favorite, Kung Lao, alongside Liu Kang. Now, I'm a Kung Lao main, so you're gonna have to pardon me as a fanboy a little bit about my boy with the razor hat. He's doing special things in this game. Now, why is this beat 'em up satisfying? You have launch attacks, you have quick attacks, you have power attacks, you have co-op attacks, so chains are not only possible with your friend, but really easy to pull off. There's also parts of the environment that you can knock enemies up into, so there's a lot of environmental kills, and the sound effects are just so chef's kiss, especially when you kill an enemy and they explode. It's insane. Just take a listen. And it's still a Mortal Kombat game, right? So there are fatalities, but it's kind of weird because it's like the worst part of the game, in my opinion. When you do activate a fatality, it's gonna stop all of the gameplay with a cutscene, which especially stinks in couch co-op. And the problem is that this mechanic is pretty necessary on two fronts. Number one, you get a ton of XP given to you when you pull off a fatality. And also there are a lot of squishy enemies in the game, meaning that this will be necessary for some foes to kill them off. So you're always guaranteed to be breaking up the flow, and you get aptly rewarded for it, where you're kind of dumb to not be doing it at all. So I feel like the fatality system could use some work, or just some more damage balancing, where there are moments you're really going to be beating up on someone for 34 hits, and it feels good to chain them and work with a friend and kind of get this combo meter up, but you're not going to do a lot of damage until you can pull off that fatality. That's the loop they try to get you in. It's just the fatality system can be pretty jarring. Now, I mentioned experience points that you're going to get. It's a pretty important component of the game because you're going to level up and be able to get a whole plethora of new tools for you to use against these enemies. You can spend them on team attacks to use with a partner, so you can whip around a hat on fire thanks to Liu Kang setting it ablaze with one of his fireballs. You can buy new combos, special moves like the hat toss that Kung Lao has, and then, for example, you could upgrade those special moves, so now my hat toss can hit multiple enemies. It's just such a good time with great progression. It's way better than it has any right to be. It's funny because the series had a reputation for naturally being a fighting game franchise. It was one of the most popular at that time, but for them to come out with this spin-off and do it as well as anybody in the game at that point, I don't know. I found it very impressive when I played it. Now, there's also versus mode because, yeah, it still is a fighting game. It's just not the best type of Mortal Kombat. It's funny because as you're playing this, you're thinking to yourself, oh man, I really wish this had the traditional Mortal Kombat fighting system in a versus mode with this very dope story mode, because it's very power-up focused. It reminds me of the versus mode in TMNT 03. So guess what? They kind of had an answer for you in the next year in Mortal Kombat Armageddon, but we'll take a look at that. Let's look at this complete in-box copy of Shaolin Monks. Complete in-box copy of Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks is here. I actually have fond memories of picking this one up because the week I got engaged is when I bought this in a store in Niagara Falls, so shout out to my Canadians. Anyway, back in the box here, says, out of the arena and into the adventure, new MK multi-directional combat system, co-op gameplay, fight individually or as a team. I definitely recommend fighting as a team if you pick this one up. Classic MK2 attacks, more fatalities, new mortalities and brutalities, and intense boss battles with Goro, Baraka, Scorpion, and others. Meanwhile, on the inside here, now you're starting to see, right, the characters. The characters are popular enough to grace the cover here. One of their better box arts in Mortal Kombat history, I would say so. Unfortunately, though, not their best manual. Still no illustrations, no color, so don't expect more of that moving forward. In the final battle of the first Mortal Kombat tournament, Liu Kang defeated Shang Tsung and saved Earthrealm from domination. But in the confusion of a mysterious earthquake, Shang Tsung and his fellow conspirators escaped through a portal to Outworld. Kung Lao, who had been posing as a masked guard, helped his fellow Shaolin monk escape the crumbling island. Liu Kang and his allies narrowly escaped with their lives. So a little bit of setup for the story there, which this game has a ton of cutscenes in it too. Like it's a great action adventure game. I really do like it here. And then they break down some of the controls that you're gonna go through here, like locking on, special attacks, and enemy manipulation, grappling, stuff that you just wouldn't really see. Well, grappling you'd see in a Mortal Kombat game, but you get my point here. Yeah, there's just a very unique breakdown here of like quick attacks, launch attacks, power attacks, grapples, Just such a different type of beat 'em up, and so fun, so satisfying to play. Juggle combos, kill strikes, air combat, body splits, evades. There was a lot to it. It wasn't just a simple mindless beat 'em up. The combo meters in this game feel great. They have non-combat abilities, wall running, swinging, double jumping, Fist of Ruin. So there were things you could do in the overworld that would allow you to explore more and get more collectibles, which was cool. You could use weapons in the game, which was awesome. So a little bit of a carryover from what you saw in Deception and Deadly Alliance, where weapons were more prevalent, where now it's like built into the character's kit, so to say. They have the experience system here, the weapon classes here, the fatality controls, and the modes that you can switch between, which was pretty cool. And then that's pretty much it, with a more familiar Midway game here getting promoted in Blitz the League, and then The Suffering Ties That Bind. Don't know this one, but for some reason kind of reminds me of Dead Rising. Don't know why, but anyway, that is a complete in-box copy of Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. As a kid, this is the game where I feel like my Mortal Kombat adventure truly began. I was just a little guy walking into Blockbuster. What am I gonna pick out? I saw this one and said, why not? And everything changed from there. This is really the game that made me a Mortal Kombat fan. When you throw in the crypt and the heavy M for mature violence, the sense of death everywhere, blood everywhere, the harrowing soundtrack. Yeah, Mortal Kombat would creep kids like me out, but I still wanted to play it because it looked like a really fun time. In fact, it's so fun, we dedicated a full video to it here on this channel. So if you missed the entire deep dive retrospective on Armageddon, you can check that out in a previous upload. If I were to break down Armageddon in simple terms, it's the Smash Ultimate of Mortal Kombat. Everyone is here. Li Mei, Meat, Chameleon, Kira, Kintaro, even weird ones like Mocap. Everybody is here, plus the classics that you've come to know and love in the roster. Now, is it the most technically sound fighting game? No, but I think there's something more important on the PS2 generation, and that's the fun factor. That's thanks to all it offers. So you have the technology that I highlighted here that was building up from Deadly Alliance, which was like, okay, let's make a 3D fighting game. We did that. Then you had Deception, which is let's refine the 3D fighting game. Let's evolve Conquest into something a little more free roaming, and let's add a couple mini games in. Okay, we got that. And then you had Armageddon step in and they went, all right, so we got the 3D fighting game down pat. Let's just leave that as is. Let's keep evolving the Conquest mode, and let's add one of the craziest mini games yet. Sound good? Great. So yeah, you still had things like your multi-level stages, your death traps, aka stage fatalities are here, the 3-tier combo system is here, but with all that carryover, what did they build? Well, it's really a game about customization. That was where a lot of new assets were poured into it to give you a lot of agency over your playthrough. So you create a fighter. From your fight styles to combos and super attacks, you can make whoever, whatever, it's awesome. You can even create your own fatality in this game, as they promote on the back of the box, and you'll see that in a moment. Now, the problem with creating your own fatality is you lose a lot of the personality that was found in Deception, in Deadly Alliance, where they weren't the mind-blowing fatalities we saw at MK11 and MK1, but you still want something there, and honestly, it was just a series of combos. I defined it in my retrospective as Midway getting a bit too gimmicky with fatalities. They had harakiris, so you could kill yourself if you really didn't want to lose to an opponent, which I thought was kind of cool. Like, you're not going to fatality me, I'm going to take myself out. I always thought that was a neat feature, but you could see they were trying to gimmick the main selling point of the series. And thanks to the technology built in Shaolin Monks, a lot of that made its way here into Armageddon, where they completely leveled up the Conquest mode once again to what I think is one of Mortal Kombat's best ever single player offerings. So in Armageddon's Conquest mode, it's a 3D beat 'em up, not on the level of Shaolin Monks, but simple and fun enough to be enjoyable. The focus of the game's Conquest mode is really around collectibles that are going to fuel the crypt, and all your unlockables like alternate costumes or even relics that are going to unlock new characters to fight with when the roster is already big enough, so you're just putting a cherry on top at this point. Is the story itself memorable? Actually, maybe the introduction. We'll circle back to that in a moment. The introduction is something you should also commit to memory as we go on in this video. But the story itself, not really. You play as a character named Taven who's chasing down his brother Dagon, the main villain of the game, in an attempt to prevent him from achieving godhood, basically. But honestly, why does all that matter when you got a kart racer? It's just a fun video game, man. It has kart racing, it has mega customization, it has a great conquest mode. It is the most robust fighting game package on the PS2 that I think that you can find. I loved MK Armageddon growing up. Was it like one of my favorite games of all time? No, but there was just always something fun to do around every corner, something fun to find. Like, every system fed into one another. You'd want to do the Conquest to unlock new characters to fight with. You'd want to do the Conquest mode to unlock new stuff that you could then put on your Creative Fighter. It just was an endless pit of content, and as a Blockbuster rental, I had to extend it because they had that 7-day offering and then they had the 14-day offering. I was like, no, I need more. So yeah, MK Armageddon is fantastic. But after this, we got Deception again? I'll explain after this complete in-box copy breakdown. It is time for the GOAT Mortal Kombat Armageddon. We love to see it here. Back of the box says, the fury of Mortal Kombat has brought the realms to the brink of total destruction. Every warrior has been summoned to the last epic battle where survival depends on their ability to fight. Fight as any of 60 plus characters from the entire Mortal Kombat universe. Create a Fighter allows you to make customizable characters that you can take online. I love how they always substitute the C's with K's. Finish your opponents with all new creative fatality system. Cool on surface, not great in execution in my opinion. Experience a deep story-driven adventure in the enhanced conquest mode, probably the best part of the game. Deliver powerful combos in mid-air with a new aerial combat system, and go racing MK style with motor combat. On the inside here, we have a booklet that we did go through in our retrospective that we uploaded a video ago, so go ahead and check that out if you missed it. But here we have, again, the standard stuff you'd expect. Black and white manual, the controls, the main menu. The Conquest comes first because that was like the major evolution for this game, taking elements from stuff like Shaolin Monks, packing it in here. The profile, right? Like they give you the profile and main menu stuff that's usually the very basic skippable stuff in the early parts of the guide. They put it right in the middle because it was after the Conquest stuff. So that's how important it was. Alternate character select, pretty important because you're going to get a lot of costumes when you're exploring around the Conquest mode. The UI is broken down. More on Mortal Kombat Online. The EULA, our favorite. John Woo's Stranglehold here. Midway extras on the back. But otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, a pretty quick complete in-box look for Mortal Kombat Armageddon. So remember how I told you to commit Mortal Kombat Deception to memory? You remember that? Yeah, well, that's why it's on the TV again, because yeah, it may be a PSP game, but they repackaged Deception and sold it to you again. You thought modern gaming was bad. They were doing it the whole time. We were just not interested enough to care because we were too busy having fun. So, Mortal Kombat Deception on the go. This reminds me a bit of Shin Budokai and Budokai Tenkaichi on the go on the PSP. This is why the PSP was such a phenomenal system, because you got these PS2 quality games on the go and you felt like you were never losing out on anything when you left your house. You had arguably the best system available when you were on the go. So you had games like Deception that would now be portable once more. Name a little bit deceptive, I feel. Pardon the pun. Maybe that was the intention, long-term storytelling there. But nonetheless, what comes in Unchained? What makes it a little bit of a different package from Deception, which we have behind us? Well, you have 6 new fighters in Katana, Jax, Frost, Blaze, Goro, and Shao Kahn. They also added a little endurance mode, which is a bit of a twist on arcade, where you see how long you can last against a gauntlet of enemies with a single health bar. Otherwise, it's the same exact Deception you came to know and love. It's got the same conquest mode, the same mini games from chess combat to puzzle combat. It's got arcade. It's a great package. Like, when you look at what it's offering for the PSP, it's awesome. But as me going through all of this for the retrospective, firing this up, I was going, wait, what? Wait, what? It's the same exact game. I was like, why does this title menu look familiar? Oh, it's the same exact game. So not much more has to be said here. It's Deception once again, but it's cool because it's on the go. And, well, yeah, you got a lot of heavy audio compression, so you get to hear really mid voice acting now, but it sounds like it's coming through a tin can. So enjoy that.
Greetings, Shuchenko. How are you on this beautiful day?
We still have more Mortal Kombats to take on the go with us, but let's go through a complete in-box experience of Unchained, shall we? A complete in-box copy of Mortal Kombat Unchained has officially graced this video. Out of all the games that I picked up for this series, I'd have to say that this one and Shaolin Monks were the most expensive, in case you're looking to add any to your collection. Now, the back of the box, well, let's just say this may be a little bit familiar here if you catch my drift. So, what does it say? It will consume you. Exact same body here about an ancient evil returning from beyond death and threatening the very existence of the realms. But then, Where it gets all fresh and sparkly and new is here in the features, where there are 6 additional fighters, including Katana, Jax, Frost, Blaze, Goro, and Shao Kahn. You can battle your way to the top in the all-new Endurance mode. There are, again, multiple fatalities, harakiris, interactive multi-tiered backgrounds, including brutal death traps, the exploring adventure mode, the mini games, and then head-to-head wireless battling, which was pretty cool to do with a buddy. Now, on the inside, we have a manual with a little Midway slip here. Shout out to Midway again. And yeah, you're going to get also, which is pretty funny in my eyes, pretty much the same exact manual as last time. They bring the crypt stuff up front in the middle, which is pretty cool, making that a big focus. They talk about the realms that you're going to see in Conquest and give you a breakdown of each of them, which is a pretty important feature to the game. Fighter selection, who all the fighters are that you're going to meet throughout the game. And you get to the back with the credits. And then they're promoting Rush this time. Just another random Midway game with Armageddon being the focus. This is when, again, they were just pumping out Mortal Kombat games like it was nobody's business. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a complete in-box copy of Mortal Kombat Unchained for the PSP. Then there was one more portable Mortal Kombat game, and that was Ultimate Mortal Kombat, which is actually kind of a funny story behind this one. So basically there was an arcade version of Mortal Kombat, right? And they ported that. And then they ported it again over to the DS. So it's a port of a port pretty much. And there is where you have Ultimate Mortal Kombat. In simpler terms, it's a port of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 for the Nintendo DS. And you get to view the humble beginnings here, right? See the sprite work once more, just appreciate where things began, especially going down the road with Deception, Deadly Alliance, with Armageddon, Shaolin Monks, Unchained. You get to see, again, humble beginnings, but what's also really cool is how they use the dual screen feature. No longer do you have to pause the game to see the move list, bada bing, bada boom, right there on the top screen, which made fatalities easier, it made pulling off moves easier. It was wonderful, wonderful. I still got my butt kicked thoroughly, but it was a great time, and you have a pretty expansive roster here. They also brought back puzzle combat. It's light on new content, but I don't think this is one of those things you want to tamper with because this is a purity sort of port. You want to just get it right. So let's take a look at a complete box copy of Ultimate Mortal Kombat and then move on to probably my favorite ever Mortal Kombat game, MK9. Shout out to the DS gang. We got you represented here in Ultimate Mortal Kombat with puzzle combat included, our favorite. Here on the back it says play 2 Mortal Kombat classics anywhere. The faithful recreation of the Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 game, compete with others using Nintendo Wi-Fi connection multiplayer. Choose from over 20 playable MK characters in 15 plus arenas. Test yourself and others on Puzzle Combat, the addictive MK style puzzle game, and challenge a friend to fight even if he doesn't own the Ultimate Mortal Kombat game, which is a pretty cool feature. And then on the inside here, do we have it? Is there illustrations? There is! Look at that! We actually have a manual with some color. How about that? I wanted to make sure I surprised all of you. So they actually have the controls here for both games. This is how they phrased it. This is your 2-in-1 package, if you will. They have you setting up a profile. They have you choosing your destiny and your character. They break down the puzzle combat here. So just each page dedicated to a component of the game. The moves list, which will be on the top screen. Puzzle combat, really getting a lot of love here, really stretching it out. I love puzzle combat, but this definitely wasn't a second game unto itself unless they expanded it, which they did not. And you can see here they're bringing down the Wi-Fi stuff, and then we have Rampage, Total Destruction getting promoted, and you have Goro on the back, the Midway extras. So yeah, pretty nice complete in-box copy of Ultimate Mortal Kombat. And actually, shout out to GameStop because this legitimate cartridge was from one of those videos, so it paid off for something. I had to hunt down the manual and the box art, but not too bad, honestly. Looking great. Mortal Kombat 9. If you got a problem with this game, I don't want to hear it. You're probably the issue, honestly. This game is downright perfect in my eyes. In fact, it's so good I could make a whole video on it, and maybe one day I actually will, because MK9 is like where I truly, truly fell in love with the series. Let's begin with what I believe is the defining feature of the game, the Challenge Tower. This mode was so good that Injustice 1 had to cram its own version of the Challenge Tower into the game. It was so good that other games afterwards would try to replicate that success, to failure. This was the single player haven mode, man. Challenge Tower was so much fun. Deadly Alliance was focused on combos, right? Upgrading what Mortal Kombat was for a new generation. Mortal Kombat Deception focused on evolving all of that and adding in a fun factor. Armageddon was focused on customization, and MK9, if I were to say it's focused on anything, it's modifiers. That is the little heartbeat of this gigantic 300 level tower. Now the tower was split off into sections, if you will, and there were little mini stories ongoing throughout all of them. They'd have little visual novel sections to set up why the mission was occurring at all, which I didn't think it really needed to. But the idea of just this mini game after mini game after mini game after mini game took the fun factor of the old games, but put modifiers into them and then mixed it into more of a fighting game spirit. They stuck to the true 2D nature of the fighting genre instead of naturally what they did on the PS2, which is making it 3D. They just made all the right choices and executed them perfectly. Now, while you're on this challenge tower, you could pay coins to skip certain challenges that you got stuck on, but they'd cost more and more and more as you opt to skip more and more, so you kind of want to be wise about when you do that. But this was also just the introduction of so many things that we know and love about Mortal Kombat. It just isn't the towers that turn into the living towers. I'll whine about that in a moment. It's things like the X-ray attacks. I can't imagine Mortal Kombat without these. And they're such a big part of the series now, right? And it started here, where it wasn't exactly your fatality, but it was sort of scratching that fatality itch you may have in the middle of a fight where, I mean, some of the things you could pull off were just nasty, man. Especially when they moved into MK10 and they evolved that more. Like Kung Jin, you'd shoot arrows into a dude's eyes and flip him over. Like, how are you not dead? I don't know, but this is where X-ray attacks began. They had tag fights, they had test your luck, test your might, test your strike, and I think most importantly, this is where people started to really understand how much this team cares about single player. You see, they were delivering at a time where some people, you know, in the industry are wavering a bit on the single player content. Again, I talk about what I'm going to start calling Evo-itis. Everyone wants to be a competitive fighter, but a lot of that market are people like me who I want to play a little bit competitively, but I'm not going to travel to tournaments and try to make a living off of it. I want to enjoy a robust package. We should have something for everybody. And Mortal Kombat felt like the only one answering the bell. Now, the reason this story mode is amazing is, let's do a bit of a callback here. What was the last mainline entry? That's right, it was MK Armageddon. And remember how I said the intro to that game actually was kind of prevalent? Well, this is why, because you kind of see the ending of that initial battle in Armageddon and how things turned out at the start of Mortal Kombat 9. So you have this moment of it feeling like a game that was the end of an arc on PlayStation 2. It did some insane things and then made it feel like the beginning of something brand new, a storyline that was still relevant even to the newest Mortal Kombat fan. And it turns out that Raiden has this vision of this outcome, and so the goal is basically to avoid Shao Kahn destroying everybody. And your story begins with Johnny Cage being a douche, hitting on everyone in sight, just flexing on everybody, right? Bringing some real personality to the fighting genre. And that douchiness is just underscored when Sonya's not having any of this. She's like, get away, I'm not interested. And they fight. And when he beats her up, he goes, hey, not bad for a woman. Like, dude, bro, shut up. I don't bring it up to complain because I think it was a product of its time, but I do bring it up because it's going to actually be relevant in MK10, where you see some real character development for Johnny Cage based off what happens in MK9. But really, the thing that I paid attention to most here when going through the story again was how the chapter by chapter nature of Mortal Kombat began here, right? Chapter 1, Johnny Cage. Chapter 2, Sonya Blade, and so on and so forth. This is where it all began. You could feel some awkward moments where fights were forced, like Johnny Cage beating up Sonya Blade because they needed more content. Like, what if they just fought out here because they had a disagreement about who's hot and who's not? Yeah, that's a good idea. Where as they went along with Injustice and the newer Mortal Kombat games, you'd see through and through how they really fine-tuned the natural feeling of the fights and synchronized it better with the narrative. And then, yes, this is why we have the complete edition. You have great DLC, man. You had stuff like Freddy Krueger. You had Kratos as a PlayStation 3 exclusive, which was awesome for its time. I wish PlayStation still had as much fun as they did back then entering the PS4 generation, but Kratos was a perfect fit for Mortal Kombat. And that's the thing, there's just this bottomless well of characters that they could stuff into this series. And I always think, oh, they must be out. And then they add a new one. And that'll especially be underlined here in MK10 and MK11. So let's get into those, shall we, and start wrapping this up. But first, let's take a look at a brief complete in box experience. Next up, we got my favorite, right? Mortal Kombat PS3. We have it on the Vita here as well because, you know, I got to play on the go. I want to have a complete Vita collection one day, plus playing as Kratos. That's awesome to me. But you may be wondering, Maddie, why? Greatest hits, really? This is the complete edition. It comes with all the DLC on disc. Plus, you have Kratos here, so I think this is just the best version to own. And shout out to GameStop again. I mean, this is another GameStop haul case, so not too bad here. The back of the box says Fatality Lives. The Deadliest Tournament is back with all the combatants and their unique fatalities, 4 new characters, where it says complete your warrior collection with Freddy Krueger, Scarlet, Rain, and Kenshi, and classic skins. Go retro with all 15 of the previously released classic skins. And then here on the inside, just, oh, I love the art for this game, man. What I don't love is this manual. It's one of those trifold ones. It is, you know, it's got illustrations, it's got color on it, but man, could have done so much more to make this goated. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, that is a complete in-box experience, if you will, of Mortal Kombat Complete Edition. All right, this whole video, I feel like I've been pretty safe. I don't know if I've had any outrageous takes yet, but this may be my first. I don't know how people generally feel about Mortal Kombat 10. This is definitely my least favorite Mortal Kombat game probably ever. It just felt like with Mortal Kombat 9, we reached heights so unfathomably on another level that it was really tough to follow up. And I feel like the product just ekes that lack of confidence. Like, how do we really struck gold there. How do we do that again? I don't know. And with that said, you can still find a video on my Mr. Matty channel. I think it's called The King, the Beast, the Matty. It's of me being toxic online, beating up people as Kung Jin. Shout out to my college years, great times. Now at first, Mortal Kombat 10 kind of speaks to the soul a bit if you remember the PS2 games. It's back to basics, like I talked about with Deadly Alliance all the way through Armageddon. You had 3 different fighting styles, and they bring back variations here, where the same character can feel 3 different ways, something that would actually be relevant in Mortal Kombat 11 as well. I do like this change because there are some characters that I like playing a particular way, so every character has their own wrinkle. Like for Kung Jin, one thing I liked about him was how he had the bow jutsu, I think is what it's called. And I just smacked people around with that. I had so much fun playing like that, but there are more ranged options if you'd like. It does kind of fragment an otherwise complete character, which is why I play devil's advocate with the system a bit, but otherwise, I am a fan of the character variations. Meanwhile, the towers saw what I thought was a significant downgrade. It felt like NetherRealm just didn't understand what we loved about the towers and turned them basically into a glorified arcade mode and a compelling daily mechanic, if you will. So in Mortal Kombat 10 are these things called faction wars. You sign in, you pick your faction, you know, oh, I'm a part of the Lin Kuei now. And when you complete things in game, like those daily missions, your faction's gonna get points, and every week you're rewarded based on where your faction is in the standings. And obviously these never turn out well because it's always very topsy-turvy, and everyone who's new ends up joining the winning side of things because that's going to give you the most rewards. It never pans out that way. And the problem is so many modes just feed into this faction wars idea. Online gameplay does, the towers do. Even going to the story mode, you're completing missions that are feeding into this. It just, I think, falls apart because it's all based around that rather than MK9's fun factor, player first, single player first mentality that made it such a popular game. So the living towers always have new tasks. Like I said, you have the classic arcade mode towers, you have test your luck, test your might. There's an endless mode, which is sort of like endurance mode in Unchained, and then there's survivor, where your health bar is going to carry over, but no real challenge tower. Almost calling them towers felt a bit like they were trying to provoke me, like, ha, it's not the tower you think, but it's a tower. It's just not the one you think. And they would do this again in MK11 to my dismay. One of the better changes in MK10 was the more unique interactions before fights and at the end of rounds. There were brutalities as well for specific supers. Like one I did was Kung Jin's arrow to the heart. If you do that as the final blow in a battle, it'll kill them that way. You don't even have to do a fatality, which I thought was great. And the lines start to blur here a bit between Injustice and Mortal Kombat, which is why I had some trouble loving MK10, as they would just rip elements out of of Injustice that made that series unique, like environment interactions, and put them in here. I know some people don't mind that sort of sharing elements, and I think as a Fallout and Elder Scrolls fan, I get that, but I think it's like, to me, taking magic out of Elder Scrolls and throwing it in Fallout and saying, don't you like that from this game? Don't you want more of that here? It's like, no, I like certain things to be unique to series I love, and so I felt like this was a bit of a cop-out, frankly, on doing something new and innovative like they did with the previous MK entry. The story, while presented well, thanks to the flow between cutscenes and gameplay, at times had QTEs, which just felt out of place. But it does begin again with Johnny Cage working with Sonya, and he's reflecting on wishing, for example, that him and Sub-Zero were on the same side again. So there's your character development. There is a little bit of that here, and I kind of like this story here because, without going too crazy in the spoilers, I mean, there's a lot of character deaths in MK9, like more than any story in the MK universe I can think of. And MK10 kind of brings that to light and puts it in your face a lot more. So the stakes don't feel as high, but it definitely is reminiscent of the good old days, which I think helps the story out a lot. So the presentations there, it definitely wasn't a bad story by any means, but I just felt like the package was easy to move on from. I wasn't in love with anything here. I played the game, beat it, went online, messed around for a little bit, and moved on pretty quickly. However, again, as I'm going to call out here and with MK11, DLC just, oh my God, you got Jason, you got Predator, you got Alien, you got Leatherface. I mean, they just taking every horror icon and throwing them into Mortal Kombat. I mean, perfect fits here. And they continue that with MK11. So why don't we talk about that now, shall we? After this very, 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 very brief complete in box experience. Oh boy, a complete in box copy for PlayStation 4. How long can we stretch this one out? Mortal Kombat 10, PS4. Back of the box says, who's next? Mortal Kombat 10 propels the legendary franchise into the next generation, combining dynamic cinematic presentation and all new gameplay to create the most brutal combat ever. We got a great Kung Lao finisher on display here for the fatality. It has character variations and it has a cinematic story mode. The inside has a really cool opening to like the manual. I actually love how this looks. The inside is just, you know, the health safety warning. You love that stuff. And then here we have a promotion for the combat pack that you can buy now. So that's your modern complete in box copy nowadays. It's usually just a very boring manual slip or a health warning that's now usually pasted to the back of the box, and then, you know, you got the combat, the DLC promotion. So there you go, Mortal Kombat 10 on PS4. So Mortal Kombat 11, we're finally here. Long road getting here, but we've made it. So MK10 borrowed a lot from Injustice 1, right? And so MK11 naturally borrowed from Injustice 2. The Injustice 2 was focused a lot on customization of your hero, pieces of gear that you'd get through repeating challenge after challenge after challenge. And so MK11 looked at that and went, it's a good idea. Let's do that. And again, this game, I love MK11, but bad game design choices to me have been sort of the Achilles heel of the last two Mortal Kombat games, and I'm hoping that MK1 doesn't have the same issue. So this entire game is built around customization. You fire it up, you can change how your character looks from their skin as their default look, to the little pieces of gear from Johnny Cage's wristwatch, to his belt buckle, to his glasses, and make this fighter your own. You can even change their super attacks, you can customize their fatalities. All of this is great. The problem is the pace at which you unlock stuff was so controversial, and it's still bad. That's because of the crypt in this game. The crypt in Mortal Kombat 11 is awesome. You're on Shao Kahn's island, and you're exploring as an unknown adventurer. And as you're going through, it's almost like a Metroidvania game in a way, where you're gonna get little tools that are gonna allow you to explore different parts of the island, but it's so currency driven, it's infuriating. You need X hearts for this, X green skulls for that, and you can waste them so easily because all the loot you get is randomized. This wouldn't be, I guess, the worst problem in the world if you could get these materials quicker, which they tried to address in patches, but never really succeeded in doing so in a proper way, because you guessed it, monetization. Fire up the in-game store and there are time crystals, and you can use those time crystals to buy rotating items in and out of the shop. It's just incredibly frustrating because MK11 is probably the best package they've put together in a long, long while, probably since MK9. But they focus so much on stringing the player along, trying to get them to buy the time crystals, or just outright grind, and it ruined for some people the entire game. I love the customization in MK11 because I feel like it takes what we saw in Injustice 2, where some of the changes were a little too subtle in my eyes. Some were much more significant, but some were way too subtle. And they really answered that to me, that critique I had in Injustice 2. And I went, okay, cool. And now I can barely get any of that because you'll spend 15,000 coins on one chest and you'll get like concept art and you're like, oh, why'd I spend so much? I thought that there'd be a legendary in here. But then you go to a 2,000 coin chest and it's like, oh, here's a brand new fatality, a legendary skin. Here's everything you want. And it's like, why is it this randomized? So the fact that everything feeds into the customization is the game's best component, but because of how you get there, it's also kind of the worst part about MK11. In the terms of the content package, beyond the crypt, beyond the fighting, you had the towers, which your classic and time towers are back, so think arcade mode and then rotating content. And then this is also where I think NetherRealm got their most sadistic. I mean, there were reports that with MK10 that the employees at NetherRealm were watching like real death videos to make the fatalities, and I believe it. Some of these are straight up nasty. Like there's one of Rambo ripping someone's throat out, and like the face they're making, I'm just like, that's awesome because of just like enjoying what Mortal Kombat's always been, which is gore, gore, gore. But as technology has evolved, I feel bad for the developers because I imagine it's somewhat traumatizing to meticulously work on someone getting mercilessly killed. And speaking of Rambo, again, amazing DLC here. You had Joker, you had RoboCop, Terminator, Rambo, as I said earlier, Spawn is here. I mean, even the story kicks butt as it puts Liu Kang in the driver's seat as Earthrealm's protector. However, the timeline must be reset, hence how we arrive at MK1. Because Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, or you can just buy it separately if you want, comes with the DLC called Aftermath, which is about a 3-hour story that, you'd guessed it, takes place after the events of Mortal Kombat 11 and is the big part of the setup for Mortal Kombat 1. So the story here is pretty important. You might want to catch up on it if you're going to pick up MK1, but otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. One more complete in box and then we're out of here. Last but not least, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate Edition, where it includes Mortal Kombat 11, Combat Pack 1, Aftermath Expansion, and Combat Pack 2. The PS5 upgrade is available for this. We'll talk about the multiple discs here in the middle, but you can see RoboCop is here, Rambo, Terminator, Melina, look at that, Reigns here, awesome stuff. The definitive experience upgrade for next generation, including visual enhancements, 4K dynamic resolution, significantly reduced load times, cross-play, and more. You'll feel the fight like never before with 37 fighters, 2 cinematic stories, and all features and modes included. Now here on the inside, 2 discs, which is kind of interesting given the Blu-ray, but yeah, you have an install data disc here that you put in first. It installs about 30 gigabytes worth of the game, and then you would throw this in and install the rest and play. I thought this was just going to be you install it and then play with this, but actually no, it's like there's just extra data on here. I'm guessing this is where all the DLC content lies, but that's just a guess. Here on the left side, we just have Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, and there's a little bit of a PS5 upgrade there as it thunders and shakes my house here. I wonder if NetherRealm didn't like what I had to say about MK10, but nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, that is a complete box copy of Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate Edition. All right, Mortal Kombat retrospective in the books, chunker of a video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your favorite Mortal Kombat down below. If you're picking up MK1, I hope you enjoy. And with that, take great care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.